Hey everyone, hopefully you guys are enjoying Monster Hunter in whichever fashion you're choosing to play it as. And today I wanted to go over the latest screenshots that we have for Monster Hunter Wilds. This is of course Generation 6, or the highly expected next generation Monster Hunter game that was recently revealed at the Game Awards, surprisingly enough. And Capcom decided to provide a bunch of brand new screenshots, essentially better images and clearer versions of some of the things that you do get to see in the relatively short trailer. The trailer isn't even 90 seconds long, but you do get to see a lot more detail on the screenshots. And I'm sure places like Digital Foundry, for example, are going to be pixel counting some of these images because they just provide so much detail there within. Now, first and foremost, I do want to make this very clear. They don't necessarily confirm which console these screenshots are for, so presumably if you take them by their history, these are most likely screenshots from the PC version of the game. We do have confirmation that it will be launching on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and PC via Steam in 2025. I've seen a lot of people already say that this game will not run on the Nintendo Switch 2, even though we have no idea what the hell the Nintendo Switch 2 is, so I always find that extremely amazing. I will say though, visually, just by the looks of it, the game looks scalable in that regard, and it kind of akens back to a conversation that I had maybe a couple of weeks ago where I spoke about the fact that this most likely will end up being a game that's available on like iPhone 16, 17, whatever the number we're up to at that point in time, because of just the scalability of the games that they are working on, and we're seeing that first and foremost. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for their official website as well, which was recently updated, and some of the screenshots provided there within. Alright, with all that table setting out of the way, I actually just want to focus on the pictures themselves because they tell us so much about what this game is actually going to be about. I'm going to be dividing the discussion in two separate things. One, I want to talk about the actual locations and the monsters showcased within, and the, I guess, scalability of everything that I mentioned earlier, and then we'll talk about actually what you get to see from the hunter itself and what teasers there could be held within. In the first image, we do get to see this pretty much early on in the trailer, but this is very clear still image that you do get to see roughly about 40 or so just herbivores, smaller monsters, essentially monsters that you don't necessarily want to hunt, most likely because they don't provide the stuff that you need for your armor, but they're just gonna be there for fodder. They're gonna be there kind of like just hanging out. Now, I don't expect the entire game world to be full of these type of monsters. Of course, there will be different versions of smaller monsters and stuff like that. Even in the trailer, you do get to see a little bit of a smaller flying wyvern, separate from Rathalos, of course. So there are multiple monsters that are gonna be covering pretty much every inch of the ground that you're exploring. But usually the biggest difference that we have seen so far is that monsters are usually in a group of 3 at most. Here we're seeing, just in this image alone, we're seeing about 40 monsters on the screen all at once. They're all be rendered, they're all be doing their own thing, and there's different versions of them as well. There's smaller versions, there's bigger versions. That group on the left side of the image is a different group than from the middle and the right. And again, because we don't have officially their names, I don't want to start speculating, but ultimately these are all new monsters that we're seeing, but they're smaller versions of things that we have seen in the past already. In the second image, we actually do get a closer shot of these armadillo big spiked versions, which actually look very similar to the ones that we have, and I mentioned this in my reaction video, to the ones that we have in the Citadel. They look extremely similar in that regard, maybe just a different version of those animals, but ultimately that is what we're looking at here. And I do want you guys to take a closer look at the right side of the image, where you do get to see some like bristle, I guess some grass, and this sandy little area. Not only do you get to see footprints in the sand, but you also get to see the different tiers of the sand kind of like covering certain parts of the grass itself, and that is just highly detailed. These are things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see on a PlayStation 4 game. Maybe even a current PlayStation 5 game just doesn't necessarily seem to deliver that kind of detail, and this certainly is in real time, because Those images that we're seeing right there, they're not cutscenes. They're just straight up real time with, of course, a fixed camera angle, so they look sharper and they look better. This is why everything in the back looks blurry by result. I like this image, the third image, a little bit better as well, because they showcase these spires. Now, this is something that you most likely haven't paid attention to, especially if you just kind of took a very quick glance at your trailer. And these spires are everywhere. Now, we don't necessarily know why they're are they directly connected to the story or not, but they are directly connected to the thunderstorm that we do see follow back after the hunter is kind of escaping. Now, this is the thing. I suggested in the video that originally the storm was most likely being housed by Kieran or something along those lines, is what I said. And monsters, all these smaller monsters, are essentially escaping the sandstorm because the thunderstorm that follows behind it is most likely Kieran. And these spires actually suggest to me that there might be some lore-related incidents as well. And if Kieran is to make an appearance, then of course it's a story-related incident. And I do find that to be very interesting. But of course, the unlikeliness of that is the fact that they are showing a lot of weather effects. Now, the spires themselves, do they ultimately have to do anything to do with the story? We'll have to wait and find out. But one of the things that I do want to splice into this video really quickly is actually the intro that we do get to see in the website. If you go to the website, you do get to see a very quick teaser of like just the weather changes that you do get to see. And originally everything starts black, extremely black in fact, and then you eventually get to see kind of things take a little bit of a turn. They'll get a little bit icy, and then kind of like the desert shows up, and then there's grass and bloom everywhere, kind of like a spring desert. So essentially what they're showcasing here is seasons. You're going to have full-on seasons in this open world environment that you're going to be exploring, and that is something that is very exciting. Again, open world complaints aside, that is something that I do find extremely very exciting, and I'm just interested to see what they're going to do with that going forward, since even with Monster Hunter now, we've seen plenty of biomes already introduced. Now, in the next image, we do get a closer look at the actual storm itself, and you do get to see one of those spires lit up by the lightning. Now, of course, we don't necessarily know what is causing the lightning. To me, it could be Kieran, but I'm being crazy right now and illogical, and I'm over the top excited about this game. But it could be potentially some lightning monsters that they were escaping that is actually housed within the storm itself. We don't necessarily know what that monster could be, but for me and my money, it would most likely be something crazy like that. But we do get to see kind of like all the monsters step away from the spire because they know those spires will conduce electricity, and that's simply the point that they exist there for. And if anything, you actually do get to see within the spires themselves, there's some lines across the actual metalwork of the spires themselves. We do get to see that in the previous clip that I showed as well, and that is showing you that these are most likely human made. Of course, they're not just randomly there for, like, you know, whatever. So they're serving some sort of purpose, most likely keeping the lightning onto themselves if people are walking around, or stop killing animals. I don't know, whatever the logic is of the game. If it doesn't have anything to do with lore aspects of it, it will most likely be that. And the last shot that I kind of showcase the environment is this one. This one is inside the storm. You get to see almost 3 separate types of different monsters in the background, which I kind of want to take a closer look at in the next segment. But this one, you do basically get to see all the thunderstorm environments kind of like racing. You get to see the winds, you get to see the sands picked up, you get to see, of course, the lightning actually hit the monsters, and they don't particularly seem to be reacting all that well to it. And you also get a much better look at the hunter itself. And if you take a closer look at the hunter's foot on the bottom right, you do get to see that it kind of does seem like he's holding a gun in there, you know, some type of gun that is being kind of like hidden in his parchment or like satchel or whatever, travel satchel. Of course, he has the little carpet in the back, little rolled up thing, so basically you're gonna be able to make your own tent type of thing in the open world. But the fact that he has a gun in there tells me now you already see his longsword in the back. So what that says to me is that, hey, double weapons, switchable at any moment in time. Most likely that's going to be coming. A lot of action games are doing that now. Devil May Cry did that to an amazing extent. Bayonetta has done that to an amazing extent. You simply just have 2 weapons active at any one time. You can swap to each one that you want, and it just makes it extremely viable to play in any way, shape, or form. And again, if this game is going to be open world, they're already revitalizing or modernizing the franchise in ways you probably didn't necessarily expect, and having 2 active weapons at one time, whether it is great sword, long sword, switch axe, light bow gun, heavy bow gun with a bow, or whatever it is you choose to go with, is going to be crazy to see. And that is basically what this image suggests to me, but also the original one as well. Now, transitioning over to more hunter actual details based on some of the screenshots we do get to see, I do like first and foremost that the only real threat monster that does seem to be here out of all of the scalable monsters, which there's another image that I want to show next, and 2 images from now. I want to show that one because it just kind of shows the scalability, but these guys here specifically seem to be the ones that the trailer tries to suggest to you that the hunter is escaping away from, but that is not the case. They're escaping the thunderstorm, which I already spoke about. And then you actually get to see a little bit more detail on the hunter, and there's a couple of things that you do get to see here. First and foremost, that is obviously just a chocobo in a different color. I've seen a lot of people kind of comment that it most likely will be one of the monsters that we have already kind of seen in the franchise up here already, but ultimately to me, this is just their version of a chocobo. Now, of course, palamutes aren't going to be coming back, and they're going to give us just like bird, wyvern, raptor, companion type, pets to kind of ride along with and all of that. And I have no actual issues with that, but it is a bummer that palamutes are most likely not going to be there, at the very least at launch, and they'll add them as DLC or something later down the road. Some sort of expansion will provide palamutes, in the future, but it's interesting to see nonetheless. In the next image, you get to see more hunter detail. You get to see that satchel in the back, the bag on the right, the weapons kind of like clinging there along, that gun just sitting there, that great sword that is just kind of like relatively well holstered in his back. And a lot of these smaller monsters as well. I think the next image, I find it to be a little bit more interesting because it showcases pretty much all the tiers of these monsters. So there's a even smaller monster that you don't actually get to see in this image. You actually get to see it very early on in the trailer. It's a very small little raptor-like thing that just kind of runs across. There's like 10 of them that follow each other. But then you have these big herbivores. You have the even bigger spiky ones that get hit by the lightning herbivores. That I'm assuming are the males of these versions. But then you have those big guys in the back escaping the storm. And then remember, these are all small monsters. None of these are big monsters. None of these are going to be monsters that you're going to be chasing after and wanting to kill over and over again. These are just fodder monsters ultimately that we're seeing. Because remember, let's contextualize this further. You're not seeing any sort of combat engagement. This hunter is just weaving around the open world, kind of avoiding the monsters and the storm that is coming. You never see an engagement, and the only real monster you do get to see here is, of course, Rathalos, and you don't even get to see him fight. So there's a lot that they're actually hiding in this trailer itself, and I do find it extremely interesting. And in the last image, you do get to see that smaller little raptor-like monster right there running to the right and to the left under him, but you do get to see the bigger scale, and that's what I wanted to talk about originally, the scalability. Monsters have now different type of scales and tiers based on what it is that you're seeing. So most likely when you do end up seeing a Zinogre, which presumably is based on everything that we know on the Monster Hunter franchise, a Zinogre isn't necessarily a big monster, but it's going to be looking extremely bigger than you and everything you've come across up until that point. And it seems like they are trying to do scalability extremely well, and they probably should, because based on the logo, we're going to get some serpents. And those things we know are extremely massive. I do want to have a couple of more videos and talk about a couple of things, especially about what Ryosu Sugimoto said after the reveal. There's a couple of Japanese developer interviews that I also want to translate, and a couple of other things that I want to get to in the near future. But once again, this game is launching in 2025. There is no rush for any of the ideas and content that I kind of want to tackle with, as more and more information begins to trickle out and we get more details for Monster Hunter Wilds. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.